Good morning, everyone. Wow. Okay. Well, you were the first 500 here. So good job with that. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Karen Levin. I am the executive director of the Baltimore Zionist District, and I'm thrilled to have all of you joining us here this morning for our tour of Jewish Venice. We're delighted to share with you that next week will be our final Zoom of the season. We will be back in October, but we are preparing for fall programming. And next week, for an entire week, we will be going to Israel. So we hope that you will join us and enjoy a side of Israel you have never seen with the help of our licensed tour guide, Jacob Shoshan. Experience the biblical and modern Israel, famous tourist sites, on and off the beaten paths, and hidden gems. We're so excited to be visiting the Old City of Jerusalem, the Ayalon Institute, Rosh Hanikra, Akko, Beersheba, Tima Park on a 5-day tour starting on June 21st at 11 a.m. So we hope you can join our bus. Registration is limited for this event, so please sign up soon. Rachel's going to drop the link in the comments for you to have for later. But for today, it is my pleasure to introduce you to our guide, Luciela Romeo. She lives and works in Venice, where her family has lived since the mid-1700s. She has been a registered tourist guide since 2000. She finds the history and present time of Venice very fascinating and loves narrating the stories of Venice with others. After graduating from North American Literature and Language, she received a scholarship from UC Berkeley and a travel grant from the Fulbright program to continue her studies in the US at Berkeley. Luciela, we are thrilled to have you here with us today, as we know your passion for sharing your city with others. At this time, we request that you please keep your videos off so we can maximize our bandwidth all the way out in Venice. And please submit any questions to Adi or myself, and we will try to get as many of them as possible following the tour.
You need to put a spotlight because we don't have an option.
You need to unmute. Okay, I'm going to ask you to unmute. There you go.
So thank you so much. I'm so excited. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm so excited to be with you, and I'm really honored to be a sort of an intermediator with the history of Venice. And as you see, I have to wear my mask. Venice and Italy right now is getting better and better. We are supposed to wear masks outdoors still, indoors, of course. So, well, I guess you don't need my mask and to see my face, but to need instead to see Venice. So where are we right now? I don't know how familiar you are with the city of Venice. You may know it's a city of islands, bridges, canals. We are by one of the most important canals in Venice. This is called Canal di Cannaregio, and the whole district is called that way, Cannaregio, and this canal was very important in the past in Venice. Now you may know, and I apologize if guys, I tell you something you already know about Venice, but I don't want to take too much for granted. Everything you see in the city came from somewhere else. So we are looking at limestone that came from Croatia. We see bricks made of clay that came from the northern parts of Venice. We talk about marble. We talk about anything like a construction material that had to be shipped in. And we know that the foundation of Venice around 1200 years ago was linked to the fact that the position of Venice, northern Adriatic Sea in a lagoon, promised excellent profits, especially because as a port, the Venetians that designed the city, that started building Venice, could build ships very well, had already an important fleet, and they were able to bring to all Europeans that came to Venice luxury merchandise that came from North Africa, like Alexandria in Egypt, then came from Jaffa, the whole area of the Middle East. And then little by little, they expanded, they reached Constantinople, today Istanbul, the Black Sea, and then along the Silk Road, were able to reach Asia. So Europeans came to Venice already very intensely, very frequently, 800 years ago, to buy spices, sugar, pepper, perfume, anything that was considered luxury. Now, this canal you see here was used by the Northern Europeans to come to Venice, which is the reason why this canal was so important. It was the connection between Venice and Northern Europe, but it was the connection between Northern Europe and the Mediterranean Sea and the Asian luxury merchandise. Everything would be sold in an area very well known for the ones that have been to Venice, Rialto. Imagine that when Shakespeare wrote The Merchant of Venice and Othello, he never mentioned other places but Rialto, because Rialto was the trading center of the world, where everybody would be. And so the ones that came from Germany, from Hungary, from Poland, people that came from Austria, people that came from Northern Europe would cross the Alps, and down there, I cannot show you now, but they put everything on their barges, and going down this canal, they reached the Grand Canal of Venice and then Rialto. Northern Europeans were coming to Venice to buy, but they were also selling. And they were selling a lot of metal, especially copper. And I have to tell you guys that Venice was a very aggressive city from the point of view of military campaigns, at least until the beginning of the 1500s. And so to have copper meant you could make your bronze cannons. I find it very interesting that when the Germans came here, Hungarians, Polish, Flemish, Austrians, with their wool also, with their silver, they immediately stopped by this place here, not inhabited at that time. It was the area where the metal foundries would be. They were called the ghetto islands, the islands where people in Venice would gettare, cast the metal, where they were making weapons. Imagine that in the Arabs world, Venetians were addressed with an Arabic name. Not many cities in Europe were given an Arabic name but Venice, and that was because of the intense commerce there. The name Arabs gave to Venice was Al-Bunduya. I'm pronouncing it wrongly, I'm sure, but it meant one thing. It meant rifles, it meant guns, it meant that Venetians were selling weapons in Alexandria. And the weapons were made right there in the Ghetto Islands. By the beginning of the 1200s, Venice became so powerful that the Byzantine emperor in Constantinople hired the Venetian fleet to get protection from the Normans, in exchange giving tax-free, customs tax-free entrance to the Black Sea, which meant excellent privileges to get to the Silk Road. So imagine such an effort. And that was just the beginning, because then by the 1200s, Venice also conquered Constantinople with the Fourth Crusade, and eventually cheating the Pope, and eventually started conquering the northern Italian peninsula by 1404. Did it make sense? Now that the plans of Venice were to conquer the Italian peninsula, to have the metal foundries there? No, it did not. We had an area just for military power called Arsenale, another Arabic word, Darsina. And so they closed down the metal foundries to move them to the other area where everything for military goals was designed. And in this area, there arrived around 100 Christians. By 1516, the decision of the state of Venice would be that in here, this would be just for the Jewish community. It would become the only place where Jews were allowed to live. And the first ones that came here were speaking German. And when they learned that the island that was given to them was the Ghetto Island, This is a water bus, guys. As I said, I'm not in a recorded one. So when Jews moved here and they spoke German and they learned that the island's name was still that of the metal foundry, the Ghetto Island, they mispronounced the word ghetto. And with a guttural G, this is the beginning of the ghetto. So as somebody said very cleverly, Venice contributed to the language of discrimination. I'm staying here for one thing, which I find very important before we get into what used to be the Ghetto Island in the sense of the Jewish district till July 1797, because I want to show you the difference between the Christian home, the yellow one, and the Jewish homes right behind. You see the difference in height. You see how many floors, how many stories, and you may notice now, that's where I will go in a few minutes. Here we are. From midnight, from sunset till the morning rise, where you see those people entering, that would be the gates of the Jewish area. Christians were paid by the Jewish community to make sure that at sunset, those gates would be closed from within. And when they heard the big bells of the bell tower in St. Mark's Square making the sound in the morning, it was sunrise, then those Christians paid by the Jewish community would open the gates and everybody could get out and could get in. What brought Venice? That was an international city, a city of cities. We had several districts where several people that came from some other countries stayed. But what brought Venetian, the Senate of the Venetian state, to tell the Jews, you're not free to choose where to live. You will give a separate place, a place which will be closed from within, from the sunset till the sunrise, with gates. I'll explore, of course, this very intricate question. But before I move to that place and I show you what is left of those gates that were removed in July 1797, have a look at this very busy street. Now, this is busy all year round. It's a street with the bridge you see here on the left, which used to be a canal. I'll show you now what it looks like. You have cafes, you have shops, you have restaurants, people talk, people just walk by. It's very busy. As I said, it was a canal once. And then somebody decided to fill it in, and it became one of the major streets in Venice. I show you how it continues. Here we are. So again, a canal that was filled in, and going down that way, you reach in around 20 minutes the Rialto area, half an hour, let's be honest. We are on the opposite side. We are at the end of the main canal in Venice, the Grand Canal. So here we have, you remember the canal where the Germans, Hungarians, and Polish, and Flemish, and Austrians bringing all those goods came in, and then turning to the left, they reached Rialto. That is the Grand Canal. Now, I must admit that I met a lot of people in 20 years I've been guiding, and some said, well, why were Jews complaining about the position of the ghetto? They didn't like where they were living because of where it was positioned, but look, it's very busy. It's a lot of cafes and restaurants and lively. And right behind me, guys, the reason why you see this lady carrying the heavy luggage up the steps and another one up these steps is that this is the way to the railway station. And then I tell them, well, when Jews lived in the ghetto, there was no railway station. There were no cafes, there were no restaurants, there were no stores, so there was no one. You had a canal still here. And this was the most peripheral part of Venice. Guys, this was once the metal foundries area. So the most, in a way, not just peripheral part of a town, but was also the place where the air was unhealthy. What kind of air would you breathe where you had debris of hundreds and hundreds of years of metal foundries activity? So this is very important to keep what it is today away from what it was in the past. Believe it or not, this area that became very popular, a hub to Venice because of the train station that was built in 1846, originally when Jews lived here till July 1797, it was right the opposite. Imagine that where the train station was built, the Venetians had kept for hundreds and hundreds of years monasteries, convents, people that were there like nuns and monks ready for meditation, for religious life, certainly not looking for a cafe or a spritz. So this was very different when Jews lived here. And as I said, this was originally the metal foundries till 1434. Then in March the 29th, in 1516, in the Senate of the Doge's Republic, Senator Zolfin spoke. Zaccaria Dolfin said, the Jews will have to live all together. They cannot stay where they like. They have to live in one single area. And there will be these gates. So what happened, now I'll show you what is left of the gates. So we have entered, and I think you can see this kind of stone that it's been engraved. And then you can see also this metal part that is still here, and it's been here since 1797. You have also down this way another of the holes in the stone where the metal latch would go. And you see also on the other side, it must have been such a heavy bar. Look how many bars you would have here. You have one here, and then you have still a metal bar here. This had to be a strong one. Okay, one more here, and one more there. Not just. This gate, which I hope is clear for you all, was closed from within. And there was a second one, right here. Again, the gate was removed in July 1707 by Napoleon, that had defeated the state of Venice and chose that a community for religious reasons should not be isolated in an area. So Napoleon was the one that told the Jews that lived still in the ghetto at that time, you can now leave the ghetto. I'll show you one more of where the metal lock would go. The metal latch would go there and there and there. And then you remember, now let me show you if I can manage, up there, up the Gangnam restaurant, which is a kosher restaurant run by the Chabad community, Lubavitch. Here we are. That's the difference. You remember the Christian house and the Jewish home with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 floors. But there are even houses here that are even 8 and 9 story high buildings. When in 1516, Senator Zaccaria Dolfin said, Jews will have to go and live in the ghetto, you may remember I told you that this became the home of some Christians. There lived around 100 people in the oldest part, which I'll show you later on. And they were all Christians. The Senate convinced the landlords immediately. How do you convince somebody to kick off the tenants that have been there for a long time, almost 100 years, to let Jewish people come in? Well, it was very easy. The Senate of the Doge's Republic agreed that if the landlords here kicked the Christians out and let the Jews in, the rents could be raised, were fine to be raised by 30%. Wow. You had some properties in the worst area of Venice, and all of a sudden its value was 30% higher. No, needless to tell you, in a few days, it was a swap. The Christians left and 100 Jews arrived to live in this area. Actually, not the very one where we are. The oldest part of the ghetto is the one I show you next. This was given to more Jews later on, but no panic. I will get little by little to the story. I just wanted to show you one more of the bakeries. This is again run by the same people that run the Gum Gum restaurant, and it's kosher. And now I'll move further down. If you are wondering how many people in the Jewish area called ghetto are Jewish, in Venice right now we have, concluding also the mainland, a very small community. It's 490 people only, 490 people, and in the ghetto there live probably only 4 of these families. My Jewish friends say, why should I live in the ghetto where my family was forced to live? But of course, this is the place where you have the synagogues, where you have also the important library, the museum, which is, you may know, under restoration right now. Important maintenance work is being done. So you may find a lot of our Jewish community members around the ghetto, but they do not live here. This is also a bakery I like showing, as this is run, and that's been run for over 60 years by the family of Giovanni Volpe. Volpe is a family that is not Jewish. And this is also interesting that we have a bakery run by Christians in the Jewish ghetto under the supervision of the rabbi. And they also show the certificate right behind, the certificate of kasherut. And now it gets sweet. So you see a very interesting tradition because it's a mix. So you can see the impada. So the impada is of Sephardic tradition especially, and inside it's almond dough. It's not too sweet. And this one here are typical of Venice. The bisse, which means like an eel or like a snake. And then you see these ones that are sweet, azime, and there's some, I love them, the fennel seeds on the top. And then you see on this side, it gets from the fennel to the sugar, to the almond, to the, here we are, Giovanni Volpe. You see the almond one, and then just in case you really love a sugar, you can also pick up the ones that are called sugar zuccherini. I like also showing what it's right down there. I don't know if you can see. This is bread pudding, the very first piece. And then let me show you right down here what we have. Wait, this way. This one here. These are the zaiti. Now the zaiti are yellow, as the name says, zaito, that's Venetian dialect. And it's because they are made with the polenta flour. And those black spots are raisins. And then you have some strudel. As you can see, this is strudel, and then you have the amantation with the marmalade and with Nutella, and then we have some meringue, and if you're not hungry already, then I don't know what else I can show you. I tell you, though, however, what is very interesting about this bakery, I'll show you the name. What is very interesting is that everybody in town comes here because the rabbi makes sure that all you find is really good and it's all the ingredients checked. So we know there's the best olive oil. There's not the unknown fat that some other bakeries will add to their bread. So it's a place where every day we have Venetians coming to buy bread. And what I find very funny is that while the Giovanni Volpe, being Christians, close on the Sunday, because it's their rest day, then they open on Shabbat, and that's on Saturday. And that's, again, as they are not Jewish, it's fine for the community here. So on Shabbat, you can then buy bakery stuff at their place, and on the Sunday when they're closed you can go to the other one. So basically we can have cakes of kosher tradition every single day. So that's the street we have walked along. It's called the Old Ghetto because this was originally the place of an old metal foundries. And this is where the Sephardic community moved by 1541 and for good after 1589. So I told you that the oldest part of the ghetto where the Ashkenazi Jews speaking German will come next. Now I'm showing you the place where the Sephardic community arrived a few years later. This is where we have our active synagogues. Here you can see the so-called Ponentina one. The synagogue that you see is just a synagogue. So the whole building is, I'm telling you because when we get to the Ashkenazi synagogues, it will not be the same. It will instead be one floor for the synagogue, one floor above for the women's section, but the rest will be simple apartments. So there's a big difference between the Sephardic and the Ashkenazi. Here you can see the place where the main room here, you can see the beautiful 4 windows and inside. This is the one that the community uses in the summertime. And it's absolutely gorgeous. We have marble, we have beautiful twisted columns. In fact, you were wondering who designed them. Well, Venice was very clear with Jews. If you come here, you're not allowed to own property and you're not allowed to be anything else but moneylender, doctor, sell schmatta, so second-hand clothing. An exception was made for Sephardic merchants, but you certainly were not allowed to be an artist. So who would be the architects? They were all Christians. And this one here was rebuilt in the 1600s. And the other one, I show you now, was also for the Sephardic. It's right opposite. And it's the one we use in the winter for a good reason. But this is heated. So during the winter time, and you may know in Venice it gets cold, you can also freeze. Sometimes, I remember the last time in 2012, we had even frozen water. Surface of the canals was frozen. So you need heating. And so this is the one called Levantina. And if you saw that movie with Al Pacino and Jeremy Irons, The Merchant of Venice, that's where it was shot. It was filmed. So this was for the Greek, Turkish Jews that reached Venice from Salonicco, Istanbul. That's why it's called Levantina, so where the sun rises. whereas the one I have right behind, I told you, is the Ponentina. So that was for the Marranos, especially Spanish Portuguese that had been, as you know better than I do, banished from the Iberian Peninsula in 1492, 1497, and reached Venice and were given a synagogue of their own. Today, the rite in Venice is Sephardic. Everybody then in the community reaches this place. Shabbat, we have soldiers protecting the moment when everybody joins and guarding during the whole service. I just wanted to show you this door, how beautiful it is. So you see that the motifs of the leaves and the flower here. I don't know if that helps to understand also the size. This is the key, so it's 3-4 fingers of mine, so it's really imposing. And I told you inside it's all marble. And I told you also that the architects were not Jewish. So did they know how a synagogue has to be built? Absolutely not. And in fact, when you go in, you find out that these people were probably told, well, look, the bima looks kind of a Christian altar. Oh, okay. So they made it with twisted columns, just like St. Peter's. St. Peter's Dome, exactly. I find it so funny. And they were also discussing what material, what to do. And this was clearly a way to represent also the power of the Spanish and the Portuguese community in Venice. I want to show you, however, something else. The name of the square. It's called Campiello delle Scuole. So Campiello, just like my name, Luisella, means little something, so little campo. Campo is a field, it's a square. Delle Scuole means of the synagogues. In fact, the word scuola in Venice meant brotherhood, meant guild, meant also the brotherhood, the association of foreigners that lived in the city. So what does it mean? It means that the Venetian government allowed the Jews to have their synagogue. And for each community that moved here, they were given each own synagogue. And in the synagogue, however, when a member of a community needed help, then they discussed how to offer mutual support. So the synagogues were just not a place where you prayed. It was a place of community. It was a place of gathering. It was where you could arrange your social assistance network. And it was also a place where you studied. So the synagogues were 3 things in one. Here you can see also one of the cisterns that the community of the Jewish people that lived here used to collect and filter rainwater. This is how Venice got water to drink till 1885. Okay, so we got rainwater filtered through the cisterns. Now I'll move to the side and show you a sign which I find very significant. On the side of the synagogue for the Greek and the Turkish Jews that moved to Venice, we have a wreath, by now pretty much dry. Up there, you see an inscription. I read the Italian. Gli ebrei veneziani caduti in guerra per la patria, la comunità con amore e orgoglio ricorda. Venetian Jews that fell in war for the country, the community remembers with love and pride. Boaf Umberto, Ancona Paolo, Boralevi Giorgio, Foà Davide Guido, Grunwald Beniamino, Levi Bianchini Angelo, and then up to Finzi Ruggero. This was placed up there in 1920, which is the end of First World War. So this is the list of the Venetian Jews that died during World War I. For the country, for Italy. They were our heroes, and likely they killed more Jews that were in Austria, fighting against Italy. Now, what my friends always point out, and they say it's goosebumps here, because on the opposite side, just on the opposite side, as if these two inscriptions were talking to each other, as if they were placed one in front of the other to point something else beyond what it's written. Here we have one of the memorials remembering the Shoah. You may know in Italy, we prefer not to use the word Holocaust because there is no sacrifice for a god. It's a Shoah. And that's telling you that in 1939 and 1945, 200 Jews of Venice, well, to be honest, the Jews that lost their lives during the Shoah in Venice were 246. I wonder why they just placed 200, probably because it was a round number, don't know. 8,000 Jews of Italy, 6 million of Jews in Europe were killed by blind barbarian hatred. That's what the Italian says. So you understand what I mean, right? I mean, right behind me, you have the list of Jews that dying for Italy during World War I were considered heroes. And then right opposite, it's instead something that happened in a short time afterwards. It's 18 years basically, because in Italy, in 1938, Mussolini approved the racial laws, and that's when it all started. My friend's father, in the book he wrote about what happened during those terrible years, he said, I was 8 years old when I went to school, and the teacher said, I'm an enemy of the state, of the country, and that will no longer be my home. So this is quite interesting, no, to have two inscriptions that talk to each other. And when people ask me, is there any anti-Semitism in Venice, in Italy? Well, in Venice, I can be more precise. My answer is yes. Because when a few years ago, a Stolperstein, stumbling stone, was stolen, then it's a bad sign, right? So there are more stories I can tell, but clearly 18 years mean nothing, can happen anything. You know, it runs right under the surface and then it surges up. Now I'm showing you the place where in the synagogue of the originally Turks and Greeks that moved to Venice, the bima is kept, comes out. It's a sort of a chapel. And we now move to the side to get to the end of the street dedicated, well, not dedicated, but called the Ghetto Vecchio, the old ghetto. And again, you see a lot of people walking around, some cafes, some lovely shops. This street is called Calle Barucchi, as there's the shop to the left, which I now see that it's closed. Too bad, because it's really, really nice. This is Baruch, and Barucchi has a beautiful mezuzah in silver filigree. They have really nice also, normally, Murano glassware. It's too bad I cannot show you. Anyway, I show you the name of the shop because it's really, really Venetian. As you can see here, Diego Baruch Fusetti. And you see also on the other side, Calle Barucchi, that's the name of the street. I'll show you also here. Okay. Not just what we see around the corner is another wreath. This was for a long time after Second World War, the school, the Jewish school. And you see the whole building, which is pretty nice. And you see also the inscription that reminds of the Rabbi Adolfo Telenghi that was arrested together with those 245 people that from Venice was killed in Auschwitz. So here we see the inscription that it's connected to the wreath right below. And what is this house, we have a beautiful garden also on the side. It's right at the border of a canal which is quite interesting, as it's going all around the island right opposite the canal that is surrounding the oldest part of the Jewish ghetto in Venice. So now I turn around so you can see what it's like. So this is a canal that runs around these buildings, runs around what you see there. It's the elderly home for the Jewish community members. Goes all around, turns around and around. So the island I'm pointing is completely circular. It's all around, and here we can see the canal coming out again this way. So basically I'm standing on a bridge right now. So to my right, you see the area that was given to Sephardic Jews from Spain, from Portugal, from Greece, from Turkey, from the whole also Ottoman Empire. And then to my left, you see instead the very first settlement of Jews that were all Ashkenazi. Let's look at the name of the place, which confuses a few people. The Campo del Ghetto Nuovo, so the square of the new ghetto. But I told you just right now that this is the oldest part. Well, we have just to agree on what we mean by ghetto. Venetians meant metal foundry. So the new ghetto, which was the new metal foundry, is the very first area, so the oldest of the Jewish districts in Venice. And let me show you what it looks like right now, with the children playing, with the cafes, with, you remember, the elderly home. We have also down there the entrance to where the museum is usually. And since 9/11, we have also some soldiers controlling the whole area 24 hours a day. And that's been since 9/11. Now, I hope that everything has been clear so far. Maybe I could ask you some feedback at the moment. Is it all fine? I'm not done.
Yes, everything has been fine. We have several questions, but we can do those later.
Okay.
Some people said maybe just speak a little bit more slowly.
Slowly. Okay, that's very important. Thank you for pointing that out.
Oh, sure.
Grazie. So what happened in this very area? You remember it was a metal foundry till 1434. And then 100 Christians started living here. The metal foundry was moved somewhere else. It was a peripheral part of a town. It was not particularly healthy. And these 100 Christians that lived here had to be among the poorest in Venice. What happened during those years? We know that in the 1400s, Venice was, as I said, very aggressive. They started attacking the northern Italian peninsula, starting with Padua, then conquering Vicenza, conquering Verona, reaching Brescia, Bergamo, and they reached the point where somebody said, this country, Venice, is getting too strong. You may know Italy did not exist till 1861. So we had all different states. Venice, that was led by the Doge, an elected state leader, and had a very avant-garde, very innovative political system, had its own state with colonies at the beginning of the 1400s that stretched from Crete, Corfu, the Greek islands, Croatia, and that was not enough. They wanted also to conquer the northern Italian peninsula. And when in 1508, somebody said, Venice is getting too strong, that somebody was the Pope. The Pope said that Venice was getting not just too strong, but was conquering too much, and managed to ally together with France, with Austria, with Germany, with Milan, with Florence against Venice. In 1508, the League of Cambrai formed in 1509, Venice army was defeated not too far from Milan. It was a dramatic situation. At that time, Constantinople was no longer Christian, had become part of the Ottoman Empire, and trading had become very difficult for the Venetians, not just. Also, Vasco da Gama circumnavigated Africa, bypassing Venice, and America got discovered, and then the Pope managed to defeat Venice. So in 1508, 1509, then imagine all the refugees getting towards Venice, a place that was surrounded by a lagoon and would promise to be safer. Also, we know some Jews moved to Venice at that time. They moved to Venice and they stayed even if they were not officially allowed to stay here. In 1516, when the situation got quieter, the Senate of the Doge's Republic decided that Jews had to be given this area. And that it's quite interesting because it means that Venice chose to keep the Jews and to give them a place where to stay. Somebody would say, well, they segregated the Jews, sure. But the funny thing is that those 100 Jews in a few years became 3,000. So when Jews in Europe heard what conditions Venice had created in the ghetto, then a lot of them arrived. I show you now the synagogue, the very first one, just so that you can compare the synagogue with I'm going to show you now, with the ones we saw before. So here we are. This is where, for those of you that are familiar with Venice, this is where there used to be the museum and it's now under restoration. Up there, you see 5 windows. These are the 5 windows of the German synagogue. That was the very first one to open in 1528. And you remember I told you, it's an apartment basically. You have the women's section on the top, and then you have some what used to be apartments right below. So this was the very first one to open, 1528. So the Jews that moved here was 1516. It took some years, 12 years, and then eventually. I think, however, you don't need me to tell you that this was kind of camouflaged. Maybe at the beginning, Jews were not feeling safe enough and they did not know for how long Venice would allow them to stay. Or maybe simply because these were poor moneylenders and could not afford for a larger home. By the way, inside today, we have beautiful wood that it's been gilded, but in the past, this must have been much poorer. And then at the corner there, where there's also the library of the Jewish community. Let me show you. Imagine that in 1521, so the synagogue had not been opened yet, but a Flemish guy, together with the help of a Jew from Tunisia and a converted Jew from Germany, printed the very first Talmud in Hebrew, and that was in Venice. An amazing project with an excellent font, beautiful ink, beautiful paper, something that started the Jewish action books, libraries, publishing history in Europe. And you see that one is the French synagogue. It's called Canton, and it's right above the library. The Canton, because of the Canton des Juifs, that was the way the Jewish district in Marseille was called. And then much later, in 1575, here we are, you see again the 5 windows. It seems that the 5 windows are 5 because of the 5 books of the Torah. But you may remember that the Sephardic instead decided to have four windows. That's quite weird. Maybe the two communities wanted to distinguish each other. The funny thing is that this one, which is called the Italian synagogue, is neither Ashkenazi nor Sephardic. You may know that this is the uniqueness of the Roman Jewish community. Romans that came here did not recognize themselves as Ashkenazi nor Sephardic because their community left the Holy Land, Jerusalem, before the diaspora. And so they were in Rome, and they came also to Venice, and this was their synagogue by 1575. So what is the pole of attraction of this place? Why were Jews coming from all over? You may notice, and you may remember, in Frankfurt, in Germany, you have a much older Jewish district. People say, oh, the Jewish ghetto in Venice was the first ghetto ever in the history. No, it's the very first time you use the word ghetto. But a district for just Jews would exist also before. What made this place very different was the multilingual and the multi-ethnic and the multi-religious nature of the ghetto. It was a place where you spoke at least 7 different languages and where all these communities were here living together. In fact, I want to remind you that the Roman ghetto is completely surrounded by churches. So every time a Jew went home, they had to pass by and see Jesus on the cross, which was clearly what the Pope had decided. Jews have to be converted. What was the position of Venice? Well, Venice was in terrible economic situations. I show you now where we have still one of the pawn shops that Jews in Venice were allowed to open. Jews helped Venice. Venice was in, I would say, really losing everything. Venice had lost Constantinople, had lost the primate of controlling the trading network in the Mediterranean Sea. We had strong opponents. And in 1516, when Zaccaria Dolfin in the Senate of the Doge's Republic said the Jews have to leave, they had a choice. Who would run the Banco in Venice? So you may notice now, Banco stands for like bank. It's properly the place where you would have the pawn shops. So imagine that the shaving set, some linen, an object in pewter could be brought here. And then the Jew would give to the Christian. Now you see a beautiful mezuzah right here. And the Jew would say, okay, look, this object, it's 100, I give you 30. In 1 year, come back with 100. So this activity of lending money in exchange for a pawn with interest rate in Italy, in the Italian peninsula, guys, was not run only by Jews. Oh no, I know Christians technically are not allowed to lend money applying interest rates, but in the 1400s, the Pope told the Franciscans who went to talk to him and said, we don't like the Jews because people go there and they are lending them money and they apply interest and they are guilty of usury. And the Franciscans told the Pope, however, what can we do? Because people needed the Jews, needed the money lenders. And so the Jews were replaced by the Franciscans. The Franciscans got the permission with the so-called Monti della Pietà to run exactly the same kind of stuff. And what was the position of Venice? Venice said, no Christian will ever run pawn shops. not even the Franciscans, who, by the way, got mad and started in their sermons in the churches accusing the Jews of all the possible diseases like the bubonic plague, or causing the war, or making Venice lose at the war. So Venice gave the monopoly of the money lending to the Jews. What did it mean? Well, first of all, a lot of debts for people that ran this place. Do you really think that in 1 year you would go back with 100 to get the pawn? These people were left with the pawn and would go to the Rialto, where they arranged auctions. And so the Jews in auction sold that piece, that shaving set, hoping to get 31, which is the real interest rate. So these were all banks run by poor moneylenders. And look who would go there. You read Rosso, I don't know how much Italian you speak. Rosso means red. Then we had just around the corner here, it's no longer the case, we had the two more. One was called the green and one was called the black. Why the color? Because the Christians that came here were illiterate. Were not just poor, they had no education, they could not speak, they could not read. And so the receipt they were released when they got the loan was colored. So you would know that it's the green, it's the black, or it's the red that you have to give the money back to. So clearly, if you lend money to people that are very poor, to people that have no economic possibilities, that are illiterate, then you don't become rich, also because none of that money could be invested in real estate, in properties. So Jews were given the monopoly of money lending with the risk of debts, with the risk of being accused of usury, but were not in a place surrounded by churches, because there was one thing in Venice: we did not want to convert any of the Jews. Venice needed money lenders, not converted Jews, not converted in the sense of Jews that had become Christian. You see also the upper part there. Talking about the bima, that's very funny. In Venice, the synagogues have the bima at the end of the room and not in the center of the room. Very likely, at the very beginning, the bima was in the center of the room, but then the Sephardi came here and built their synagogues with the bima at the end, and then the Ashkenazi copied. And it's quite interesting because the solutions that Christian architects applied to the synagogues in Venice were then used also to build churches. So there was a strong contamination, as I call it, in a positive sense. So the community found that Venice was giving, let me use a strong word now, not just segregation, but was offering also a place of protection. Of course, no need to tell you, nobody knew how long that brackets protection would last. But they came here and they said, well, Venice is rather tolerant. The fact that also the Talmud was printed showed. And also during the 1600s, there was a saloon here, an academic center held by Sarah Copio Sullam, where the Gentiles were coming to learn more of the Jewish culture. And so the Jews came here and started building. Yes, they paid to add the floors. But you remember I said this was not their home. At a certain point, the Venetian state told them, well, we noticed that you spend a lot of money for homes that are not yours. So let's do this way. It was called Yus Hazaka. These houses are not yours, but you are allowed, like on a lease, to sub-rent it and to give it to your children. So this created a lot of complicacies because the Jews were not the owners, but almost were the owners. It's a sort of a compromise. And I want to add it now. I hope it's clear. We are in Italy. So one thing is what the law says, and one thing is what really happened. So in this area, there were not just Jewish people living here. That would be too simple. history is very complex. And so we know that here the property was Christian, that these houses were rented to Jews, that sub-rented the house to poorer Christians, that paid them the rent, and the Jews paid the rent to the Christians. And we know that some Jews also lived outside the ghetto. Of course, it depended on education, which varied, and the level of the social class. So Jews perceived the ghetto as a place also for their community, where to be in a way among themselves, in a way feeling also protected. The best words I have discovered reading, describing the ghetto, is that this was the best compromise between the nightmare of banishment and the chimera of integration. You would not be accepted here, but you were not banished either. For how long? This was not clear. By the way, I'll soon leave this area and show you what happened on the back. I just want to tell you one more story I read, which I find, well, one summer I decided to start reading notaries, notaries pinned down in the homes of somebody died, what happened. So I started reading these lists of things put down by the lawyers in the past of the 1500s in Venice. And I ran into these lists of objects that were found in Jewish homes when a Jew died here. And in the Sephardic section, you read, I found a beautiful headboard. I found beautiful leather. I found expensive goldware, silverware, even gilded leather, beautiful silk as well. And then very poor furniture and a bigger trunk. What does it mean? It's very clear that the people that were living here did not know for how long they would be allowed in Venice. So they never spent money on something they would not be able to carry along. So this shows how the wealth of the Sephardic was not giving them the certainty of being fully accepted here. As I said, a compromise between a nightmare to be banished and the chimera of integration. I'll leave the ghetto in a few minutes. I just want to show you that this is where our community remembers the tragic years in 1943, 1945 especially. You may know that in Italy, Mussolini, apart from the fact that he had also Jewish lovers, one of them was from Venice. Her name was Margherita Sarfatti. She was an intellectual, a socialist, as Mussolini also at the beginning of his career seemed to be. And she was the one that introduced Mussolini to the elite, political elite in the city. I'm afraid that also in a way she helped him become what he became. She also wrote in 1925 a bestseller published in London, the biography of the Dukes, with which she, in a way, celebrated, glorified Mussolini. And that was, I would say, the beginning of his career. And then, of course, our Margherita Sarfatti was pushed away after the racial laws started. Now, you know, however, that in 1943, on the 8th of September, Mussolini's government stopped its existence and Italy signed the armistice. And that was a disaster as the deportation started. We remember the deportation here in the ghetto. This is an artwork by a Lithuanian artist, Arbit Blatash. Arbit Blatash in 1989, which is also when the Berlin Wall was removed came here with this idea of the last train. It's a bronze bas-relief where all the people represented are blurred. You don't see their faces, but you do understand what happens. It's the moment when the Nazis are taking them off the train. And then you can see also with the machine gun, and then the families that are carrying their children, carrying some luggage, that are limping, and you can see here with the stick, more families. Very powerful work, and must be seen together with what it's right behind. These wooden planks remind you slightly of a train, that very train. And in these wooden planks, the names of the 246 Jews that were killed are written down, the name, the last name, and the age. I find it very interesting as a historian, because history is people. History, it's me, it's you, it's each of us. And the memory is not just that blurred image that we know is represented in the central part, but it's also the single people here. Also because these people tell us that it really happened. These people really say we existed. And the fact that it's written on the wood, to me, reveals the potential weakness of memory. The wood disappears, the bronze does not. So as you can see, it continues also on this side. My question, and I know it's a little bit provoking, is this the right place for the memorial of the Shoah? We are in the camp of the Ghetto Nuovo. Well, the thing is, do we need to have an African-American district to place a street dedicated to Martin Luther King? I know it's a little bit provocative, but for me, the memorial we have just seen would be doing perfectly well in other parts of Venice, such as Rialto, St. Mark's Square, because it's something that concerns all the city of Venice and not just the Jews that lived here. Also, if you come here without any guidance, you think that the ghetto was a concentration camp, which is instead particularly wrong. Otherwise, Jews would have not come. So this is also true, that Venice is not a city. I'll show you now something else down there. Venice is not a city that told the Jews, we don't like you, so we segregate you. Venice is a city that said, we don't like you, but we need you. And you are a people that need a place where to stay, and we are a city that needs money. And so those capitals that Jews brought would help the city in a very difficult economic situation. So if you place the memorial here, people can confuse, can make it superficial, can see the ghetto the way it was not. It was a prison, but was also a fortress. It was a fortress, but was also a prison. It's both. And now I show you up there the memorial of a very beloved one. His name was Giuseppe Iona. He was a doctor. He was the president of the Jewish community. In 1943, he was the first one Nazis arrested, and he killed himself after hiding all the records so that Nazis did not know where Jews in Venice lived. It's an interesting inscription. At the very end it says, alla rovina d'Italia, a nuovo martirio di Israele, non seppe sopravvivere. It means, to the ruin of Italy and to the new martyrdom of Israel, he did not know how to survive. Well, it seems almost that he had not courage enough to survive, no, that he killed himself for lack of courage. Many would like to change this inscription, but at the same time, you agree that if I belong to an association called Iveser, we take care, it's a huge archive of anything that happened during World War II, including also the Shoah. And we believe that it's important you keep this inscription the way it was designed a long time ago in the 1980s, because it shows how people thought in the 80s. Now we no longer think that way. We would never say Giuseppe Iona committed suicide because he had no courage. Rather, I would say it's the opposite. But if we erase history, then we make history too easy. History is also the way we relate all the time. And this is, as I told you, the rest home. And you can see here some of the Stolpersteine that Gunther Demnig has placed all over Europe, you know, that they are made in brass, and they remind you of where these Jews lived and where they were arrested. Maybe you don't know, but in Italy, the Stolpersteine are placed also to remind of the discrimination. So you may find also this Stolpersteine that said, this is not where this person lived, this is where she was teaching and she lost her job because of the discrimination laws. So that's a new interpretation of the Stolpersteine. And this is the elderly home where for the Nazis it was so easy. 21 elderly guests were taken away. The Nazis came to Venice and looked for Jews 2 times. One was in December, the third in 1943, and then the second time was in August in 1944. Now I'll move down this way to show you the third district. So to complicate everything again, in 1633, another area in Venice was given to more Jews. Jews that wanted no home here, no home also in the Sephardic area. They were Sephardic, but wanted to have their own place. And I'm going to show you where that was. I still have a few more minutes and then it's time for your questions. So what I'm going to show you is the so-called super new ghetto, the ghetto Novissimo. And this is where there used to be another gate. So right now the ghetto in Venice has been kept more or less the way it was in the ancient times, except for the area where I told you the green and the black pawn shops were kept. So now I show you the canal that I told you is running all over the place. Okay. I hope I'm managing to give you the geography. You see the slums here. I call them the slums because the quality of life here must have been really bad. I mean, the density of population in the ghetto had to be very, very high. And this is where the museum is under restoration. And here we get yeah. Okay. Calle Ghetto Novissimo. Now, this was given to Jews in 1633, which is 2 years after the bubonic plague killed in Venice something like 55,000 people. So what I mean is that the Venetian state invited Jews to come right after the bubonic plague had reduced the population of Venice of 2/3. It may be that the connection here is kind of low, but I want to show you the newest ghetto. Again, you imagine the gate here. This is just the back of some homes I'll show you soon from the main entrance, and then I'll finish my tour, and then I'm ready for your questions. Okay. Turn around. So it's Sephardic. It's down this way where the gate used to be. It's a huge gate. It's all surrounded by beautiful limestone. It's almost a work of art. And here we are. I'm leaving the ghetto. So right now I'm no longer where the ghetto officially was. I'm showing you the entrance to the third ghetto, the newest, as I said, that started in 1633. And then I will reach the bridge there so I can show you this house where Jews lived from its main entrance, from its main door. This is very important because I don't want you to go home saying that the ghetto was just the place where Jews lived. I told you it was a metal foundry at the very beginning. It became the Jewish area after the poor Christians were kicked out, poor in the sense really poverty. And then more Jews arrived because Venice needed them. First the Ashkenazi, then more Sephardic, and then after the bubonic plague. Guys, can you see the beautiful house here? This has nothing in a way to be less important than the houses on the Grand Canal. And this was just one home for one family. It's quite interesting, therefore, that it depended on your social class, your social identity, your education, what kind of life you would lead in the ghetto. These were very wealthy Jews that led a very interesting, and I would also say, a good life. And then as soon as the gates were opened, they moved outside the ghetto, and they were the first ones that left. So I don't know if I was clear enough. May I add one more thing? Jews in Venice, for sure, had been around for centuries. We know also that in 1382 and 1397, there was another wave of Jewish migrants that came to Venice, and they were told to live in Rialto area, very central area. And then finding no longer the need to have Jews, the Venetians in a way banished the Jews that lived on the mainland to come back to Venice by 1516, when I started the tour with all I told you. The difference is that during the first migration wave, Jews were told to live in the most central part of the city. But after 1516, they were told to live in the ghetto. Why this change? Well, we can talk about it for hours and hours, but I think that the key to understand the Jewish ghetto was the invisibility of a community that the state needed and that the Venetians didn't like. So in an area where never a church was built, in an area that had been a metal foundry, Jews could live invisibly, without being viewed. And also the Christians that came to the ghetto would be asking for loans without being viewed, not revealing their poverty. So the invisibility of a community that was essential for the survival of Venice was in a way granted thanks to the ghetto. I don't know if I've been clear enough. I hope I have. It's a very complicated story, and I don't know. I'm sure that you have a lot of questions, so let me see if I can help answer some of them. What do you think,
Okay,
Karen?
I got it. Thank you so much. It was wonderful tour, very informative. So many wonderful comments for you here in the chat. Let me go over just some questions that we
Please.
have here. What is inside the old synagogues? Are they being maintained and are they closed because of COVID?
So the synagogues are not closed because of COVID. The tours must be booked as there's a limit of a number of people. But as for the services, they are run. In the two synagogues I showed you, sorry, now it's the summer one.
Okay, great. So if people go to Venice, they're allowed inside the synagogues at this time.
Wait, you need the passport. You need to contact our community first. This is, sorry, I put it up there because I think, can you hear me fine or not?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so perfect. I'll do this way. So you need absolutely to contact our community first because you're not allowed to get in for security reasons, just like that.
Got it. Thank you for that information. How diverse is the residential population of that area today? Are there both private houses and apartments?
So the houses in the ghetto are not so comfortable because you have no elevator. And so you have to go up and down a lot of steps, which I must say it's happening in a lot of places in Venice. I live myself on the 4th floor and I have 78 steps to climb. Oh. But it keeps you in shape. No, I mean, eight floors, it's more than 78 steps. So they are apartments and there's not a house, it's all apartments of different qualities. Some, I would say, don't go if you are over 4 feet or 5 feet high, then it doesn't work.
That's perfect for me. I'm 5 foot tall, so I'm going. So a lot of people are asking about the Jewish population in Venice now. What's that like? If 490 Jews lived in the quarter today, what's the total population?
So Jews in Venice right now live everywhere, especially outside of the ghetto. It's 490 people, which is very small, Karen. It's very small. So yeah. They think that as in Italy, you may know, we don't have Reformed Jews, but only Orthodox. So it's doomed to disappear because the city itself is also depopulating. So what was the question exactly? How, when in the 1800s, the Jews left the ghetto, a lot of them, especially the wealthy ones, took care of the city very much. So they acquired the properties, which Venetians were no longer able to maintain. And some also donated their properties to the Italian state, like Giorgio Franchetti. So I would say that right now there's a variety, of course, within the Jewish community society, and they are everywhere. I mean, there's not a specific,
right?
I don't know. Yeah.
So not it's a like everybody number in that area. Yeah.
Oh no! Right now in the area, it's 4 families.
Okay. Why were there soldiers guarding the square since 9/11?
Because they think that it could potentially be a target of terrorism, which makes no sense. I mean, I think, I hope at least, in the sense that in the place where Venetians segregated Jews to organize a terrorist attack, but in fact, we have, and that was before COVID especially, a lot of people that come to the synagogues. And so that's possibly a target. It's become a very popular place. By the way, Karen, I did not tell you, but when I became a tour guide 20 years ago, one of the books I had to learn by heart, 750 pages, written in font like 3, so small, and listing all the possible churches, all the possible artworks, all the possible dates. Well, I met this friend of mine, Shaul Bassi, and his professor at the English Literature University here in Venice. And he said, oh, you have to read that book and learn it by heart. How much of that book is dedicated to the Jewish history? And he was like, wait a second, I have to go back. So in 750 pages, it was 4 lines.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So you see, we have
Yeah.
changed a lot in all these years. It's been, especially in 2016, when the 500th anniversary was remembered.
Sure.
Then there was a lot more research, a lot more studying, a lot of more understanding, and eventually it's no longer 4 lines. Although that book is still promoted. I don't know why it was written in the middle of fascism. I find it shocking anyway.
Yeah, that is really shocking and good information. Thank you. Someone stated that there don't seem to be any signs of water damage. Is that part of Venice subject to flooding and sea level rise?
So it seems some lucky. So we had a terrible flood in November the 12th in 2019, and it did not reach the ghetto. So that was very lucky. I have a dear friend, Jiva Kraus, who runs a wonderful photography shop, a gallery in the ghetto. And she was a very good assistant of Peggy Guggenheim in Venice. And she ran at 4 in the morning to check her gallery. And thanks God, the water had not come in.
Great. Let me see if I have stuff I have. I think that was really it, because a lot of them had to do with the synagogues and wanting to do a tour inside the synagogue. So perhaps that's something that we can work on for another
I'll give
time.
the link, because for security, again, you need to go with one of the museum guards and assistants. I cannot take you in the synagogues.
Oh, you can't do it either. Okay. Got it.
Also, because my colleagues 25 years ago, when asked, are you interested in running tours of a synagogues? I would have said, yeah. They said no. So it was like, whoops. So when I became a tour guide, I said, oh, I can tour around everywhere except the synagogues. Good to know.
Right. Interesting. Okay, so I think that's it. Apart from everybody thanking you and saying how beautiful the scenery is and really feeling like they were right there with you. So we really appreciate you taking the time and being with us today, all the way from Venice, and for everybody on our call here.
I have to thank everyone for the patience, for the attention they gave me during this hour and something. Really, thank you for your patience. Really, grazie.
I think it's much appreciated on both ends. So thank you. And thank you everybody for being on the call. Just a reminder that next week, starting on Monday, we're doing a 5-day virtual tour of Israel with limited registration. So please, we will put the information for that in the chat right now, and you can go ahead and click on that right after the meeting and get registered for that. And as well as this will be available for the next 2 weeks for you to watch and review if you missed a couple of words. And that's via our YouTube channel. So feel free to go and rewatch it right after the program as well. Thank you. Other than that, everybody, for being here. We are so appreciative of all your donations, all your sponsorships, for us being able to make these types of tours happen for the entire Jewish community. Thank you, Luciela, again. Appreciate it. I really love your view, much better than mine and Adiz, who just popped on the call. So thank you for being here, and we will see everybody hopefully next Monday in Israel. So thanks so much.
Wow.
Have a great day.
Grazie. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much,
Bye.
everyone. Grazie, Adi. Ciao,
Bye.
ciao, ciao. Thank you.
Ciao, everybody.
Ciao, everybody.
you.
Ciao, ciao, ciao.
Ciao.